Now in today's video, we're going to be covering some of the biggest, most craziest, inaccurate myths when it comes to our favorite little lizards that love climbing trees, which is anoles, or anoles if you like to be more particular. Which, basic information for folks who don't know. They're little lizards, sometimes can be relatively large, and they're going to be inhabiting Caribbean islands or some of the more Caribbean-esque mainland. Basically all New World continent is where you're going to find this animal. And then guess what, they're going to be ectomorphs, all this fun stuff. Anyways, let's roll it and figure some stuff out. Now in the big 2025, it's hard to believe that some people believe in this day and age that brown anoles and green anoles are the same species. Now, it's odd, it's strange, and I'm sure there's some people like, huh? What are they doing? It's weird. It's weird at the end of the day. I get it. It's weird. But, on the other hand, anoles have so many myths, have so much misinformation about them that's just widespread and taken so seriously, almost like it's gospel. It's really hard to blame a lot of people, especially the newer keepers who are just getting into the reptile hobby, or just starting to finally get out of crested geckos and diversify their collection, if you know what I mean. They just get something a little cooler. It's understandable in my opinion. But folks at home, green and brown anoles are both their respective species. The green anole is Anoles carolinus, which is native to the USA and has a couple invasive populations outside and a couple subspecies outside the US and all this fun stuff. Now, Anoles sergae, aka the brown anole, is not native to the USA at all. They are invasive in Florida and have basically formed a wild locale, you can kind of say, where they basically have high expression or reticulation, where it's typically their head and bits of their lower back that are more red, right? But with some lime green, we now have all red individuals. So that's kind of the thing, but they're more so out in the Caribbeans and all that fun stuff, and they're, to be honest, they're invasive everywhere. Brown anoles are probably like the most successful invasive anole that you can find, just because they're so widespread for y'all. But again, it's not a case of sexual dimorphism in this species with anoles. They're both their respected species. They both have males that are green and brown. They both have females that are brown and green, unless it's a xanthic green anole or a high expression red brown anole. Or a really good example of actually having a sexually dimorphic anole is Anoles smallwoodi. Now, as you see, this stunning individual is a male. You can tell he's a male from one. Let me move my hand. I have the female in the other hand. Guys, chill. There we go. From all the spottage and the lack of banding. Plus, he has a more broader head. Where with the female, right, she'll have these banding on her that will indicate that she's a female, like most of the crown giant anoles from Cuba. But a lot of them do lose this, or at least on this intensity when they get older. Where smaller, they tend to keep it, which is really cool in my opinion. But yeah, and they have smaller heads. Look at them side by side, y'all. This is Anoles smallwoodi. This is male. This is female. Also, just want to give you a reminder, they are stressed. I did just pull them out the enclosure, so they're definitely not our biggest friends right now. But typically they're more like a green, blue, bigger, more bold. They're really fun. They're one of my favorite. I've been raising this pair since they were a baby. Or another good example, which is actually on the female, which is the Pinocchio anole. Now, the Pinocchio anole is an anole we're never going to really get in the hobby, at least legally, anytime soon. But males will have that really long, extended nose, where the females do not have that feature whatsoever. Which is really sucky, because imagine, you're an anole, you're an animal. Your namesake is quite literally an adaptation that only one sex of your species has, and you don't have it, because you're a female. So, it's really kind of bummer, really cool, but that's a really good example. They're on the phone, man. Now, folks, there's a really common myth that you'll hear super often, which that anoles are a really good entry-level, pet animal. Really entry-level reptile, entry-level this and that, good for beginners, etc., etc. Now, let me tell you real thing, disclaimer, it's true, kind of. But in the sense of that, if you actually know what you're doing and you're prepared, they're really simple in my opinion. But for most people who get into anoles, who are getting anoles, which will typically be Anoles carolinus, the green anole like we talked about in the first bit, or Anoles sergae, they're going to be a animal they spent $5-10 on. And they probably got it from Petco, or they got it from a reptile expo that was probably selling them as a feeder animal, so they're not going to tell them proper care. They don't really care. Petco definitely ain't gonna have any proper care information on them besides maybe a UVB, because they've been getting a little better. I'll give them credit where credit is due. But that's the thing though. They're not getting enough information. So when they bring this animal home that needs a large-ish enclosure, they need humidity, they need temperature, they need UVB, UVA, they need fast-moving animals, because 9 times out of 10, most anoles are going to be conditioned to eat things like crickets. Roaches are not going to be fun for you, because roaches will dig, they won't do much, and you know, that only really works once you have an animal more conditioned to you, which is why I use so many roaches with my anole feedings. Because let's say my lutoglares over, I can tongue feed like you're seeing on the screen, works wonderfully. Say my Farius, I can't just throw dubia in there, because dubia are going to burrow under the soil before my Farius get to eat them, and it's a waste of time and pointless. Then after all of that, we didn't get to the crazy stuff, because back when we circle back into lighting, their UV bulb or tube, in most cases at least, you know, yeah, their tube is what they need, but in most cases, people who are just getting them, they're going to be buying like a bulb, essentially. They're going to have to replace multiple times a year. The lighting, like the actual heat bulb, is going to be replaced multiple times a year. Then the food, endless feeders, right? So think about that. That doesn't sound that crazy to someone who's more experienced, but someone who's just getting into the hobby, right? You're hearing all that information. It may be a little bit of like an info dump on you. It may just be a lot of info. Now, you spent probably $5 on your green anole, and sure, you love it and all this and that, but a lot of people who say that do not want to put in the effort it will cost and take to give the animal the proper needs it needs to do to actually be an easy animal, folks, which is very sad, but it's honestly the truth at the end of the day. So, you know, if you're ready, you have everything going, you know, it's going to work out for you, versus say someone who went to a reptile show. They bought a crested gecko. They got a little 18 by 18 24 on their desk. They maybe have UVB if they're being a little extra, I guess. And they basically just mix up a fruit mix and go like, food, food, food. Versus anoles, they're like, oh my God. Quick, missed once a day. Second time a day. Boom, third, quick, need to feed them. Boom, feeders. We need more feeders. We're out of feeders. No. You see, it can get very chaotic for your newer keepers. So honestly, anoles are great. They can be load maintenance if you know what you're doing. But majority of people who are anoles are generally marketed towards, they're not going to be their friend. So that's a little myth I wanted to disprove. Let's move to the next one. Be honest. Like, I love making content. I love breeding animals. I love doing all this fun stuff. I love working with my unique little anoles. But I would also love to see my sub goal get to 1,000 subscribers. So, you know, if you're watching this video, sub, like, maybe share with your friends. If you're learning anything new, which I know, I can't see, sorry, my eyes are looking crazy. I know you'll learn something new. And if it is something new, God, my eyes, leave it down below. I'm very interested. I love reading comments when I get them. Now, there is a anole myth that is somewhat related to the last one, but it can be construed into something. So that's why it's getting its own part, which is anoles can live in 10 gallons. When you go to these stores, like I mentioned with Petco earlier, a lot of times they're going to say put them in a 10 gallon. You go to a reptile show, you buy these brown, green anoles from a guy, they're going to say, hey man, 10 gallon are a perfect enclosure. It's not. It's not a perfect enclosure whatsoever. Simply off the fact that anoles need one thing, which is a lot of height. Let me give you an example. You see this enclosure right here? Let me move my light, right? Well, I'm 6'1". I'm 6'1", right? The enclosure starts here. Here, this is a better example. Let me move that. See this? I'm 6'1", remind you. See this? That's how I'm keeping my crown giants. Anoles need a lot of space. They need a extreme amount of height for them to thrive and properly do what they need to do. Because these animals love to climb. They typically in the wild are going to be living on a tree to another tree, and that's going to be it. There'll be vines, they'll interconnect. That's their whole world. And all they really know is up. They go up, up, up. Cool tattoos. But if you keep them in a 10 gallon, just think about that. Here is up. The up is a screen mesh with a heat bulb on it that gets really hot. That's not going to work out for the animal. Not to mention, even if you're trying to breed the anole, and not even like from a breeding aspect, just like you have a female by chance, female anoles will still lay a lot of eggs. Even if they're not paired up with a male, even if they aren't of breeding age, they can lay eggs before the usual year. They can lay eggs at 8 months. So imagine you're a little female anole that needs like at least 8-10 inches of deep soil, humid soil that retains humidity to lay your eggs. Guess what? You have a higher chance of getting egg bound, because how are you going to lay those eggs in a little small environment like that? All I'm saying is that a 10-gallon is not the right setup for a anole. It is very commonly talked about that it is the perfect setup for them. But in many cases, people who will keep their anoles in a 10-gallon, they're just doing what they think is best. They're very misinformed. I have no hate for anybody. I just want to inform, change opinions, and help improve the lives of my favorite little reptiles, be it the green anole or Anoles lithoglaris, Anoles barbatus, or my favorite Anoles valencii. Any anole, perfect, beautiful animals. They all need to be treated with valuable respect. But anyways, this is the end of the video. If you liked it, again, like, sub, share. Guess what? Boom, right here, wherever this is, you should watch that video. It's going to be a fun little topic where I'm learning more about anole myths that I busted these. Anyways, into the video.